the scholarship opportunity. So as Kristen and Esther said, there are 5 opportunities for you to work with a job coach like me. And hopefully by the end of our time together today, you're convinced that you should do that. So as Kristen said, she emailed out to you information to get into our website, but let's dive in. Let's talk about interviewing, and we'll be talking a little bit about preparations. And we actually skipped our session last week, so I'm going to try to talk about, preparing for the interview, but also how to actually answer those common and difficult interview questions. So I'll be looking for you in the chat to ask your questions and let us know what your biggest concerns are. We will be talking about the STAR method. If you're familiar with what that means, it's basically a method of telling your story when the interviewer asks a question. So I'll go deep into that. And then, of course, just preparing for the interview Q&A, right? What questions they're going to continue to ask you, what questions you should be asking them. And now, in the world we live in, excuse me, isn't it a lot of phone and video interviews, right? So being prepared for that. Excuse me, of course, my voice is going to be not as ready as I am this morning. So you probably saw this in your email. This is the information to get into the website. And we are excited to be offering the scholarships today. If you do have questions about this process, you can always email us at fifth-third-workforce-development@nextjob.com. You can reach me that way if you have some questions that we don't get to today. But I'd love you to chat in or just even unmute yourself and speak up. Let me know if you're in the A, B, C, or D category here of the last time you interviewed for a job. So how long has it been since you actually interviewed? You've interviewed in the past few months, 6 months to a year, or so forth. A, B, C, or D. Let me know how that's going. Okay, good. A few of you in the D, okay. Couple of years, 4 months, all right, good. Okay, so a big mix here. And if you haven't interviewed in a lot of years, I can tell you right now, it's changed a lot, right? My background is from recruiting. I used to be a recruiter. And so I kind of have that perspective of how the employer goes into things, what they're looking for, what it is that they really want from you. And so that's what we'll be focusing on today. So how prepared do you feel to interview right now? 1, 5, or a 10? Okay, scale of 1 to 10. Let me know how prepared you feel to interview right now. Okay. Can answer some questions. That's good. Knock it out of the park. I love it. Okay, so 5. All right, good. So we're in the realm here, right? I mean, most of you know pretty much what you want to say, what you want to focus on. Okay, good. That helps me to make sure we spend our time valuably today. So interviewing well requires some preparation. And what we have found just through surveys from the labor statistics is that applicants don't perform well according to the people who interviewed them. They said they didn't perform well because they just didn't go into the organization showing interest and how they're going to bring their value. What Esther was talking about, their value proposition, we could call it your 30-second commercial, your elevator pitch, whatever term you would like to be, focused on and talking about. So I'd love to know for those of you who maybe have interviewed recently or you're feeling really prepared to interview, are you willing to share with us your 30-second commercial, your 60-second commercial, what it is? So when you sit down and they say, okay, great, welcome, Kristen, tell me about yourself. What would you say? How prepared do you feel to share that? And if you would share that with me, I'm pretty sure we can talk Fifth Third into giving us some good prize here, right, today. So this is a picture of the NextJob training software that you received the information to go log in. The interview section is probably our biggest module in the whole website. And I think it's because we spend so much time worrying about it and talking about it and thinking about it. So it's a lot there. So I'm not going to be able to hit on everything. So I definitely encourage you to go there, check out the information in this module called the interview. And one of the best opportunities that you have is actually to do a little mock interview, a video interview that we're seeing more and more happen, right, through AI and those opportunities that you're seeing with video interviews. So I'll talk more about that in a few minutes. So the normal process in most interviews, as we, I think, have all experienced, right? We've all interviewed for a job, is that there's sort of these expectations. Sometimes during the application process, you're actually being asked more and more to answer pre-screening questions, right? So that's the first thing I'm going to say is make sure you fill out that application as completely, as thoroughly and competently as you possibly can, because more and more companies are just asking pre-screening questions in that application process, because that helps them to start to sift through people. And when the economy is down, they're getting oftentimes 300 applications for one job, and that's a lot to sift through, right? So just be prepared for that, understanding that there might be some assessments, some testing, screening, things like that happen. And then you get to the actual interview, right? Now, the second most important thing I'm going to say today about interviews is go with confidence, okay? Once you got through all this and they call you for the interview, they liked what they saw, right? They liked your resume, they liked whatever questions you asked, however you filled out the application, all those things, they liked that. So go confidently, okay? You all said you feel pretty prepared to go out and interview. There are a few ideas and options here of ways to practice video interviewing. Higher View, and it's VUE. That's one. I mentioned the one that's on our website, where we have basically an HR person who's recorded questions, and then you record yourself giving the answer. That's on the Next Job Training website. And it really is pretty cool, because then you can see your mannerisms or how you paused. You can re-record it over and over. You can delete it, any of that. And if you do take one of the coaching scholarships, you can share that with your coach and say, here's where I think I answered well. Here's what I was kind of, a little bit more worried about. So check out those opportunities to practice with video interviewing. So let's talk a little bit more about prep, personal prep, and then meeting preparations, okay? So personal prep is, that idea that, again, the second most important thing I said to you today, they like you. They, like you on paper, okay? And they probably like you online, because let's not, kid ourselves that they didn't look you up on social media of some sort, okay? Whether you're on LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter or whatever, and you think it's private, I'm here to tell you it's not. There are ways and recruiters get good at it. I was good at it, and that was, 10 years ago. I can find people. So just understand that, they liked what they saw. Have a positive attitude, right? Sort of give yourself that opportunity to have a positive mental rehearsal of it going well. You should be going in there feeling confident. You can make a positive impression just by doing that. Let's talk about some micro-communications and physical and verbal communications. So there are things that we might be telling ourselves about how the person is perceiving us, right? So body language, facial expressions, those kinds of things. It is normal to be nervous, okay? I'm sure it is. We all are nervous to go into, meeting someone the first time, and this is sort of like a first date, right? If you haven't been on a first date in a while, it's the same kind of philosophy. We do want to have some confidence. I love this picture over here on the side, because this person is got their shoulders up and kind of clenched. That in itself is going to make the person perform very differently in the interview than like this person here in the back, right? Who's sitting back, relaxed, feeling confident, feeling comfortable. Those preparations that you can do beforehand are really going to come out in the interview through micro-communications. So stand up, feel confident, be ready. And if you have to do this in the restroom before your interview, you can maybe see me, the Wonder Woman or the Superman, right? You put your hands on your hips, chest up, chin up, take a breath. It's okay. It's okay to be a little nervous, but that can actually physically help you feel a little more confident. You know what you're going to say. You all told me in the beginning of this conversation, you know what you're going to say. So here's some examples of that power posing and then lower power posing. What that can actually do to us physically affects our mental ability to talk about ourselves successfully in the interview. And I am zipping through some of these a little bit quick because I want to make sure we get time to actually answer interview questions. So let's move to meeting preparations. Obviously, you want to do your research. And so here's the third most important thing I'm going to say today, and that is when you apply to a job, print it off or save it to your computer somehow, because sometimes if it's a month later or 2 months later, you might not be able to pull that job listing back up and read it for the interview. And that's a problem, right? And I know you're applying to a lot of jobs, and so that can become a problem. I understand that, but maybe you could file them by company or something like that. Then you can always dump that stuff later. But that would be, something that I think is important, because it does happen that, time goes by, companies are moving a little slower, perhaps with their hiring process. So you really want to have that piece of research, because that job posting is a piece of research that you can really use later, right before the interview. Now, build your interview agenda, which is things like, I'm going to use my 30-second commercial, very obviously, right? And I'm going to shake hands with them. I'm going to perhaps, maybe not, maybe fist bump, maybe just wave from across the room. I don't know, wherever your community is, I guess, with the, social distancing and so forth. Or otherwise, it might be like this, right? It might be on video. So then you're going to obviously be prepared with the questions that they're going to ask you. And we're going to develop those star stories here in just a minute. And then you're going to prep for the questions you want to ask them. And then you're going to rehearse it. Okay, so somehow on interview or HireVue, excuse me, or on the Next Job Training website, you're going to practice some of those, or a mock interview, with Kristen and her folks. There are people who can actually help you with a mock interview before you go. And I know some of you have interviewed recently, but others, it looked like it had been a few months, right? So practice this stuff out loud. That's what I'm suggesting. Okay, so we talked a little bit about research and what it should include as far as the company, but it should include you, right? That value statement, that 60-second commercial. What do you contribute? How do you say that out loud? And I wasn't watching all the chat, but maybe Kristen or Kira, you can give me an idea of, did anyone volunteer to give their commercial? So your brand, your statement, what it is that you can contribute. Obviously, you're going to say a little bit about or study a little bit about the career field. And maybe you're going into a new field that you haven't been in before, because the job situation in the market in your area has changed, and that's okay. All right, but obviously understand the employer and researching their website. I mean, that is just like basic standard interviewing. I can't think of any hiring manager I've ever spoken to that doesn't want you to have looked at their website and their recent information out there. Okay, so then how do those intersect, right? So your brand and yourself and the things you do, how does it intersect with them, with that company, and what their, is going on in their industry? Okay, so let's just talk a little bit about that employer's perspective, right? Now, some of you might have been hiring managers before or are right now. So tell me if I've missed anything or you can think of anything right offhand. But when they're interviewing you, like I said, they already kind of like what they see, right? They already kind of think that you can do the job, whatever is going on. And then they meet you in person and they think and they're trying to understand, can this person do the job? Do I want to work with this person? Like, can I sit in the same room with them and have lunch? Does this person want the job? And I have to tell you, in my times of recruiting people, even who were, perhaps not perfectly equally qualified, but this person who was a little less qualified just really had enthusiasm, wanted to learn, really wanted the job. I'll tell you, I hired that person over the more experienced person. So showing that and telling them that is really helpful. Can this person add value, right? So how you're going to be able to talk about yourself. So employers just want to know, are you knowledgeable, likable, teachable, and really understand the job? Okay. Really interested in the job. So they're thinking these things about you. Maybe there's buckets that we could put that stuff in. Are you passionate about job and life? So when they say, what are your hobbies? They might really want to know. Maybe some of you included a bit of that information on your resume. Do you care about self-improvement, right? How will you fit in? And I have to tell you, every time I've ever filled a job or worked with a company to headhunt a person for them, they brought me in and I toured the facility. And why did they do that? It was so I could understand the culture of it, right? So that's what they're trying to figure out about you during the interview is, will you fit in with them? Okay, and so maybe you want to do a bit of research. I'll give you a good piece of research is also glassdoor.com. So glass like a window, glassdoor.com. Great website to look up the company. Now, not all companies are in there, but a lot I have found in almost every market are out there. And you can see, of course, if they have job listings, what their salaries are, and then interview questions. They allow people who've interviewed there or worked there to talk about the organization. It's really cool. Good stuff, negative stuff, whatever. And so, how are you going to fit in? Well, you might know a little bit about going into the situation just by looking these companies up on their own website, of course, things like Glassdoor. I also love the Chamber of Commerce. Okay, so if you have a local Chamber of Commerce in your area, which I think you do, check with them. What do they know about the company? You can definitely hear from them, from fellow business owners, or at least from the staff of the chamber office. That's a great place to start. Okay, so I'm not going to be able to go through this thoroughly with the interview agenda, but just some information here, and I'll share this with Kristen. You're welcome to share this out, Kristen. So of course, you're going to have your stories, your strengths, relevant skills, key achievements. I mean, this is just standard interview stuff, right? Maybe a little bit in your interview portfolio, like if you have certifications or anything like that, you're going to have a little, a thin portfolio, right? Obviously, you'll have your resume, it'll have your maybe references in it. It depends on the job, right? Depends on where you're applying, but you might have an interview portfolio that you can leave with them. So these should be copies of things, okay? Interest and knowledge, of course, about the company and that industry. Okay, so let's dive a little deeper into STAR and what that looks like. Okay, I'm going to answer that question here in just a couple minutes about the contact information. Okay, so situation, task, action, result, and then we threw a bonus R in there, which is relevance. Okay, so this is basically the way of a tangible storytelling method to answering interview questions. And a lot of interview questions come out like, well, what would you do if, or tell me about a time when, okay? And so what they're looking for is for you to give them a concise answer, right? That's the point of the STAR method, okay? Is that it keeps you on task, it keeps you focused on the answer, and probably you've already thought of this story, okay? And the reason that I'm saying that is I'm going to give you some topics today that if you can come up with a STAR example for, let's say at least 3 or 4 of them, and I'm going to give you 6 topics, you should be able to answer almost every interview question. Okay, very comfortably and competently with this STAR method. Okay, so the situation is describing the problem, right? So let's just say they asked you, tell me about a time when you had to resolve a conflict. Okay, whatever it is. And so, or how do you deal with conflict? Let's just say they come up, they ask you, how do you deal with conflict? Well, an example comes to mind, right? Because you have an actual legitimate example. So you go into telling them, so what was going on was that a person came in and they wanted to do a return, but the policy of the organization is that it's past 90 days. And she was pretty sure it was past 90 days. So I could see that it hadn't ever been used, right? So that's kind of understanding the situation. So what I decided was that I would, think that maybe there's something we could do. So I let her know that, but it was going to take a few minutes. Then that's the task, right? Is I think I can solve it, but it's going to take a few minutes. So the action I took, right? The action you and you alone took. Now give credit where credit's due. Okay, we'll talk about that more, but outline the actions you took, right? So describe your thought process, your decision making. I know in my mind, I'm thinking, I know we've made these exceptions before. I can see that the product has never been used. I'm pretty sure we can do this for like a store credit even. So I just check with the person that was my lead there, in the booth with me or whatever. And so I said, this is why I'm thinking that. I know this is a person who's been here before. I've seen her shop here before, whatever the action was, right? So then that we said, yep, it looked good and we could do it for a store credit. So then I came back to the customer and I offered that solution. It wasn't her first preference. She really wanted to just get a refund. But, as I talked to her, I said, hey, I've seen you here before. And I know that you shop here a lot. So I hope that there'll be something that you can use the store credit for. And then she smiled right then and was like, yeah, I do shop here a lot. So you see that gives, and so in the end, I'm demonstrating, so thinking on my feet and obviously being really observant during the time that I've worked there has really helped me to be, focused and on top of my customer service skills. Okay. I'm totally shooting off the hip here, you guys. Okay. So, but can you see how I tried to make, first of all, the point of the result? Because I can tell you that in interviewing, when I have interviewed people, that's the piece that people miss. They focus a lot on the action. I did this and I did that. Well, yeah, but what was the customer's end? Or what was the point of the question they were asking you? Tell me, how do you resolve conflict or how do you deal with conflict? Okay, you're going to give them a specific example, not just I try to work through it with the person and see what they want. Well, that's not always what the company wants, right? If just to get the customer what they want, because we couldn't, in this situation, we couldn't give a refund, right? But we could give a store credit. And I know she shops here and I mentioned it and okay, yeah, you're right. So then bringing the relevance, that last little bonus R to, why it was important. This really stands out about my customer service skills. Okay, so let's talk about how you're going to put together your STAR stories, 3 or 4, maybe 6 of them from the examples that I give you, and be ready, like 100% strong, ready to roll on your examples. So 3 or 4 questions that identify, I'm sorry, something's going on with here we go. Include behavior, situation, and competency-based scenarios, right? So when they say something like, well, what would you do if, or how do you handle, or tell me about a time when, all of those lead-ins can be answered by a STAR example. Okay, so let's look at these topics. Okay, here they are. Oh, actually, there's, kind of a 2-for-1 here. Tell me about a time you demonstrated initiative or creativity. Okay, so I like them to be 2 different things, right? So creative could be building something or developing something, a project, things like that, coming up with a solution to an idea, right? But initiative is going above and beyond. So I think that's two different star stories, okay? Then problem solving is just what we were talking about before, maybe, right? Something that you could think of how you solved a problem, maybe of your own, or within that line that was moving along. How did you go about doing that? So put that into a star format. Organizational or planning skills, decision making, I think, is another one. And then I like this kind of persuasion slash resolving conflict, because if you're in a sales role, and that could be in retail, but that could be in medical device sales, there's always going to be persuasion involved. And that's a way of resolving conflict, because maybe in the mind of the buyer, they're not committed, they're not convinced, right? So that's resolving conflicts. So think about it from that standpoint. If you can come up with star stories for those examples, 3 or 4 of them at least, I think you're going to see that it's really easy to answer pretty much any question they throw at you. Maybe they don't word it exactly that way, but you know in your heart, like, oh yeah, this will work. This example is going to work. Okay. I'm going to go more into that here in just a couple minutes. So your 3 strengths. How many people love the my strengths and weaknesses question? Isn't that one just so much fun? Love that. Okay, I want to make sure I answer this question. The weaknesses and strengths. So weaknesses should never be something that's going to directly affect the job. Okay, now, especially stuff that's required. Now, stuff that's preferred, I could definitely say, like, math is not my friend. Okay, I could never work at a bank. I could never work in finance or something like that. There's a lot of tools, right? There's a lot of resources. I can add, subtract, multiply, divide, but outside of that, I'm just not comfortable. It's not my thing. I don't enjoy it at all. But if I'm applying for an accounting job, I can't say that, right? How do I go about mentioning that? Maybe Excel, maybe I could use one of the tool examples as this is something I'm working on. And that's how you address the weakness question is, I'm aware of it, I'm working on it, okay? But the reason employers ask that question is they first of all want to know that you are humble enough to know that you can admit it and be working on it. And that's okay. That's fine. All right. So 3 strengths for sure. And I hope every one of you right now could list your number 1 strength. Okay. And I'm going to ask you to put that in the chat, actually. Okay. So what is your top employable strength? For me, it is the ability to talk to anyone. I have been blessed with the gift of gab, I guess, but I'm also a good listener. And I can ask questions to get people to talk about themselves as well. That is my top strength. Please list yours. What's your top employable, valuable strength? All right, creativity. Love that. Somehow you're a banker. I love that. Math is not your friend either. Well, I'm glad to know that, Kira. Organization, good. And definitely in your role, Kristen. I'm going to go back to this question while you all are thinking about that. What's the contact information for help with a mock interview and how to access the recording? I have to exit for a meeting. Oh, okay. I'm so sorry. I hope that Natalie didn't already do that. We would love you to email one of us. So if you want to share that with her, Kristen, she can email Fifth Third Workforce Development at Next Job, and one of us would be happy to help her with that recording tool on the website. Looking for more. My top strength, quick learner, team player, love it. All right, well, thank you so much, because every one of you has a top employability strength, right? So you have to be able to speak it out loud in person and practice it first in the mirror, to the dog, to the friend, to the whatever, and say, my strength is. Okay, so please do that. All right, so let's look at some star examples, and then we'll dive into some of these more difficult questions. So during your relaying of the story, we want to make sure that there were enough details to understand the situation without giving too many details, okay? We don't want it to be overwhelming to them. All they need to know is like context, okay? Were the actions focused on showing what you did, right? How you contributed? What skill or competency did you use? Well, I was thinking, right? When I gave that example, was thinking, we've done this before. And I've seen this lady in here, right? So were you systematic, concise, and analytical? Maybe not in every situation, but yeah, probably in almost all of those, you can say you were. If there was a negative result, especially if they're asking, well, tell me about a time when you tried to solve a problem and it didn't go the way you'd like it to go. Okay, so what did you clearly learn and how would you have done it differently? And I wouldn't give the negative result unless they're asking for it. Okay, so if they ask you for a result, you're going to want to have one of those too. I learned a lot from that situation, and this is how I'm going to do it differently in the future. Okay, but that's if they're asking for a negative result. All right, and then did you connect your examples to the current job you're interviewing for? So that relevancy, right? So what I see in common with, how that situation ended up is, that it really relates and really expresses my customer service skills, okay? So the top 3 most common screening questions, let's talk about these because we just said it, right? Anybody willing to volunteer? Put yourself out there, take yourself off mute. Tell me about yourself. Welcome. Tell me about yourself.
I can go first, Dixie, if we need to.
Thank you.
Sure. So my name is Kiara Gashaka. I have been in the banking industry for 11 years. I am from Ohio, but I decided I wanted to move south, so I made my way to North Carolina, and it's been the best decision I could have made. There's less snow, and that works for me because I enjoy working in the community. And in order for me to get out into the community, it needs to be warm weather. So that is a little bit about myself there.
Very good. Thank you. Yes, that is exactly. Do you mind, Kara, if I give you a little feedback about that? Okay, so that's a great summary, right, of why and where she is. I love people telling me where they're from because sometimes you'll just get a connection and be like, oh, we're alike. My husband's from there, or I'm from there, or whatever. Always include something like that. I moved here from Reno. I used to live in Reno. And a lot of people I have found been like, oh, I know someone from Reno, right? Maybe that's negative, maybe it's not, but they know someone from Reno. And so giving that little piece at first, Kara, that was so perfect. And then you would probably flow into, a little bit about your background and then how you ended up where you are and why you're so excited about interviewing for this job, right? That's the natural flow of the tell me about yourself in an interview screening. So great job. Thank you. Anyone else? That money, that gift certificate's burning a hole in the pockets of Fifth Third. They're gonna want to give you one. All right, I'm gonna pause one more time before we're done, so you'll get a chance. Okay, one thing that I want to just hit on before I switch over to the more difficult questions is that opener that we were just talking about. Just making sure I drive home the fact that you should be telling the interviewer why and how their job fits your interest and future plans. So it'd come to the end of all that, saying all of what we just talked about, and then connect the dots for them, right? So when I saw this job opening, and I have wanted to work for this organization for a long time, but then you drive home this job, why you want to work at this particular position. In mind of the employer, they want to be thinking that you're going to live and die to work in that job. They will never have to fill it again. Okay. Even though they know that that's probably not going to happen, you'll move up or whatever. So please don't ever ask that question. What are the opportunities for growth? Because they don't want you to leave that job ever. So I hear that a lot, and not to say that there aren't times when it's appropriate, but that would be like the second or third interview, perhaps not the first interview. So when you're first interviewing with someone, I would not ask about growth opportunities and moving out of this job into something else. Okay. So build that elevator pitch. You're going to be, using it so frequently. You've been writing resumes or you've been using resumes for a long time. That content on the top of your resume, the summary statement, whatever, that's if you're not ready with your 30-second commercial, 60-second commercial, you can use that content, right? It's going to be coming from the top half of your resume. That's where you're going to be talking about yourself. Okay, so here's an example of a, move this little box out of the way. An interesting and insightful introduction. I love figuring out how to design solutions to problems. When I was in my second year of college, I found I had a real knack for design. I wanted to pursue engineering. Okay, now some people might be saying, I didn't go to college. Okay, so let's just modify this. I found out when I was going to high school that I really loved creating things and solving things and taking stuff apart and putting it back together. So I thought there was some relevancy there to engineering. Right. So when I started work, I kind of worked in, basic jobs and fast food jobs or whatever, but I had the opportunity to try out fixing things, right? I could take apart a machine, the ice cream machine wouldn't work or whatever, and I could fix that and put it back together, clean it, make sure it was good to go and make it happen the next day. And what I found was that I was good at that. And in fact, I could show other people and I became the supervisor. I became the person who, trained all the new people. And I wasn't really looking to be a manager, but I found that this was an opportunity that, I'm really interested in. And so when I saw your job posting, I knew that, with the mechanical interest I have and that background that I've used already, I'm confident about my ability to work in this position. Okay, so maybe you want to be thinking about how does that really work for you. So get that 30-second commercial really ready to go for you. I want to make sure we have enough time. So I'm just going to stop my share for a second and switch to a different PowerPoint. There we go. Let's see if I can make that bigger. Okay, so we're back to the website. So the interview tool is the one that I was talking about with the HR person who recorded questions. So when you log into the Next Job Training website, you'll find it right here at the top. And then he has two different kinds of questions. There's like normal questions and then more difficult questions. So try those out. And like I said, this is happening. We are getting a lot of job seekers who are telling us, I got an email, like a link emailed to me, and then I had to answer the questions and it was timed and I had to record my questions and then I, clicked submit and it went back to them. And then someone in their HR watched all those videos. Okay, so that is happening a lot. So check out the interview tool and, make sure you're good to go on that. Okay, so we, little reminder here, be mindful of emotions, especially if you left the last job not of your own, choice. Maybe it was the pandemic, maybe it was, things were just happening in life. Just be mindful of that. Talk through it a couple times beforehand. Avoid giving too much information, like I talked about before. This is a first date. We want to be concise in how we talk. Okay, so let's turn to these questions. So you've got your topics, right? We were taught to say if you could come up with a star example about initiative, if you could come up with a star example about persuasion or conflict. You came up with one about, initiative. creativity, things like that. So here's some basic questions, well, more difficult questions, common though, right? Very, very common in an interview. Who would like to take an opportunity to tell me about a time when you handled one of these? Okay, you can pick the question. I am here to talk through, give a little advice, maybe steer you in how you would answer these questions coming your way using a STAR example. So remember the STAR: situation, task, action, result, and then of course relevancy. And while you all are thinking about who's going to go first, I'm going to put that in the chat, okay? Okay. Fifth Third money on the line here. Who's going to go? Who would like to tell me about a time when, and you pick the topic? Or you could pick another one. Natalie's back. Yay, good, Natalie. We just showed the interview tool. So I hope you saw that. All right, unmute yourself. This is not scary. I am the least scary interviewer, hopefully.
Hey, good morning, Christian.
Good morning, Natalie.
Hi, how are you?
Good, good.
I'm gonna go ahead.
Okay. Which situation?
I'm gonna go with, let's go with you were most proud of yourself, academically or professionally.
Okay, so Natalie, thanks for coming to the interview. Tell me about a time when, or the situation that you are most proud of yourself professionally or academically.
All right. I think it would have to be, I'm sorry, let me put myself as if I am actually interviewing.
Yes.
Moment.
Yes, please.
All right, let's see. A moment where I was most proud of myself, I'd have to say professionally, and that is taking on several projects with my team. I started with a company that did not have an applicant tracking system, as well as other systems that were required to help support managers in their teams, and not only on the applicant tracking side, but also as well as on the communication side for employees, including an intranet. So working out of my comfort zone on the tech side, so it required collaboration with the IT team as well as with department heads, executives, as well as employees for their feedback. So again, it was multiple projects and being able to have to manage those and speaking with individuals who can give me feedback as well as that can influence the project to move forward. I am blanking out here, so bear with me.
You're good. You're good. So then tell me about the action. So I've got the situation and kind of what's going on. So tell me about your actions.
Okay, so the actions that I took was really organizing myself in a way to focus on the priority, which required me spending the weekend on the applicant tracking system and setting that up for the hiring manager so that by Monday morning, the system was up and running. So that was the first action that I took, and then meeting with the hiring team again to be able to find out which positions they wanted to post on the website, as well as contacting our vendor in regards to any hiccups that we had at that time. So the outcome of that was that the system, we saw that it actually did not meet our need. So what I did was actually source several different applications that I thought will be ideal for our culture, as well to speak to more futuristic organization, and something that'll be a little bit more feasible for the hiring managers. It didn't require a lot of their time, something that was user friendly, as well as for candidates. So I work with different managers and different vendors, and I selected the one that was ideal. And that turned out, after 2 years, actually became like one of the best tools that we have used in the company, that has improved our engagement with employees as well as our onboarding experience with candidates. It has helped managers tremendously to be able to process applications as well as for performance reviews. So it's been an amazing tool. It actually helps us doing the transition for employees from being in the office and working remotely, because we had a digital tool that was able to help us.
Nice. Yay. Go, Natalie. That was awesome. Very well done.
I tell you, it's quite nerve-wracking.
Yes, it is, right? So I think there's a couple spaces there where I think you realize even you can kind of tighten that up a little bit. But yeah, just like I said, kind of having it in your mind of like, okay, the situation was this, and then what I knew had to happen was the task, and then what I did, right? And then the result. I thought you did very well. So yeah, there's a couple places there where I would say tighten that up a bit. But ultimately, when you talked about a couple things that I wrote down, organization, and then basically what your priorities were, what was the whole purpose of the system, right? There are pieces of that that could actually be used in other questions too. So be thinking about that, because there's multiple results really, right? You told us about the result that you're most proud of, but really there's probably results that you could say that related to organization, all of the people that you had to bring together, working with the vendor, working with, what the department heads really wanted or needed for their particular use of the system. I think that was beautifully done. And you have a great example there that you could probably split into, a couple of different questions as they come your way. So well done.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Anyone else? All right, well, no problem. And I want to make sure we honor the time and end at the top of the hour, but here's some questions that, maybe you are going to be having come your way. And like I said, we'll share this PowerPoint out as well. And you notice I switched there in the middle. So tell me about yourself. We know that. What's your ideal job? Now, you're probably not going to get that in an interview for a job that you saw posted. That might come as a recruiter if you're working with a recruiter. And I told you I was a recruiter. I loved to hear that from people. What would they like to do? Because then I could go out and try to find that job for them, especially if they were very well qualified in that particular role. Why did you leave your last job? That can be a tender spot for some people if you were laid off. But otherwise, if it's very obvious and easy to explain, well, the pandemic, and then, where I had children at home, where I had to take care of someone. So what you can do is, and if it's been a space there, if there's been a gap in your employment, you might want to address that just by basically saying, and I know some of you were here at the resume session we talked about 2 weeks ago, but having that information ready to roll and ready to talk about is important. So just basically saying, this is what happened, or I was taking care of someone, or I was out of the workforce, but I've gotten focused on my job search 2 months ago, or in the past 3 months. So you're shortening that gap of job search by the fact that you're saying, I've really only been looking these past couple months. So just understand that there are ways to do that. And if you have a gap, you're definitely a person I would suggest for the one-on-one coaching, that we would love to, help you with that. If it's something outside the pandemic, I mean, that one's just an easy, everyone understands and everyone knows or had it happen to them or knows someone how it happened to. So, please let us know how we can help you with that. What have you done to stay current in your industry, right? There's so much online learning happening right now. I love this question. If you were a fruit, what kind of fruit would you be? Okay, but that is just a curveball question that people are asking, things like that. What animal would you be? You know, what kind of eggs do you like? It really is just to see if you have a sense of humor. Maybe it has to do with their culture. They might even ask it with a super straight face. I've seen people ask, well, what kind of eggs do you like? Just totally flat. And you're like, where did that come from? Okay. They do want us to have, you know, just be prepared that and you can laugh and be like, you know, that's a good question. Let me think about that. You know, what describes you about the fruit? You know, what describes you about the animal? I always say I'm a tortoise because I'm slow and steady. I might not be the first one getting there, but I'm definitely going to get there. Okay. Now, if I'm working in a fast-paced job, I can't use that example, right? Short-term jobs, why should we hire you? All of these are going to be coming your way because they're probably interviewing a lot of people. I don't worry too much about short-term jobs because 3 years in a job is a long time now, right? 2 years, 1 year, I mean, 6 months now is pretty normal in a job. I wouldn't go less than that. You know, if you can help it, stay at a job 6 months before you change jobs. Why should we hire you? Love that question. You definitely should know why. That's your value statement. And then comparing it, drawing that line to what you know about the job, right? That job posting. All right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your time and I will throw it back to Kristen.
Thank you guys for joining us. Please take advantage of the information that Dixie gave us today. Also the tools that NextJob has for you. I emailed that out earlier today, but please take advantage of that. We want to thank you guys for joining the third Next Jobs. Thank you so much for making this happen today. And we look forward to seeing you guys on our next one. If you guys are interested in financial literacy, we do have a class on Thursday, financial literacy at 11 a.m. and at 6 p.m. at night. So look for our information or just email me. My information is in the chat. Thank you so much. Have a great day.